We live in a world where a single line of malicious code can freeze global airlines, wipe clean the bank accounts of millions, and hold entire hospital networks hostage for ransom. Yet, if you trace this terrifying, multi-billion-dollar shadow industry back to its very beginning, you won't find a single digital mastermind, cyber syndicate, or rogue state. Before hackers wore hoodies in dark rooms and before antivirus became a multi-billion-dollar shield, there was no such thing as malware. They were researchers trying to share computer power, teenagers looking for a laugh on a snowy winter break, and small shop software developers trying to stop people from stealing their work. Our story begins in 1971. In a quiet laboratory at BBN Technologies, a brilliant engineer named Bob Thomas was working on ARPANET. Bob's official assignment was to develop a clever resource-sharing system called RSEXEC. The goal was simple. If one computer on the East Coast was overloaded, could a program travel to the West Coast? To demonstrate that a program could travel this way, Bob wrote a small, lightweight piece of code. He called it Creeper. When Creeper arrived on a new machine, it didn't steal passwords, scramble data, or slow things down. It simply printed a playful teletype message onto the operator's printer. "I'm the Creeper. Catch me if you can." But the idea unsettled people enough that a colleague of Bob's, the legendary engineer Ray Tomlinson, who would go on to invent email, decided to play along. Ray's version of Creeper would copy itself. To prevent this growing digital family from accidentally clogging up the mainframes, Ray wrote a second program. He designed it to travel through ARPANET, find active copies of Creeper, and delete them. He named it Reaper. But ARPANET was a private, professional playground. For a computer virus to spread to ordinary people, it needed a completely different environment. It needed the personal computer revolution. By 1982, that revolution was in full swing. In Pennsylvania, a 15-year-old high school freshman named Rich Skrenta was quickly gaining a reputation among his friends as an absolute menace. Rich would ask to borrow a friend's game disk, modify its code, and hand it back. When his friend booted up the game, the screen might play random beeps or flip upside down. Eventually, his friends stopped letting him touch their disks. Over the winter break of the 1981 to 1982 school year, he sat in his bedroom, coding in raw assembly language. He wanted to solve a puzzle. How could he prank his friends' computers without ever physically touching their disks? Elk Cloner was a brilliant, parasitic piece of engineering. Rich hid the code in the boot sector of a floppy disk, the very first place a computer reads when a disk is inserted. When a friend booted up an infected game disk, Elk Cloner would quietly slide itself directly into the Apple II's temporary memory, or RAM. The moment his friend inserted a clean floppy, Elk Cloner would silently copy itself onto it. Most of the time, Elk Cloner stayed completely silent. But on exactly the 50th boot, instead of launching the game, the screen would clear to reveal a green-on-black poem. Elk Cloner, the program with a personality. 4 years later, in 1986, the first virus for the IBM PC, the dominant business computer of the era, would emerge from a small, dusty computer repair shop in Lahore, Pakistan. The brothers were self-taught, highly skilled programmers who had written specialized commercial software they sold out of their shop. But Pakistani copyright laws did not offer legal protection, and customers were freely making illegal copies. Bassett and Amjad were frustrated. They didn't want to destroy anyone's computer, but they wanted to track their software and protect their livelihood. So, they wrote a program. They called it Brain. Brain used an incredibly sophisticated stealth technique, the first of its kind in history. Brain would intercept any attempts by the operating system to read the boot sector and redirect them to a clean, hidden backup copy. But the brothers didn't want to hide their identities. They typed their real names, their physical shop address in Lahore, and 3 active phone numbers directly into the virus code. The brothers believed the virus would remain local to Lahore. What they didn't understand was just how quickly floppy disks crossed international borders. Within months, Brain boarded airplanes in the bags of travelers. One morning, the phone in the brothers' quiet Lahore shop began to ring. It was a woman calling from Miami. Soon, the Alvi brothers were receiving hundreds of calls from angry, confused computer users. Stephen Hawking once noted, "I think computer viruses should count as life. I think it says something about human nature that the only form of life we have created so far is purely destructive. We've created life in our own image, but that life didn't start with malice. It started with a prank, a joke, a simple spark of curiosity. If you want to discover more forgotten stories where tiny human moments changed history, hit subscribe. And that's another forgotten story from Circuit and Chalk.